This video is to showcase how to search and use the legislation on Lexis Plus. So to begin with, using the main search engine on our homepage, we can type in the act or statutory instrument that we may be looking for. As an example, I am going to go in and look for the Criminal Justice Act 2003. Now, you can leave the act as the entire act as we currently have, which is going to find us the whole of the Criminal Justice Act 2003. Or if you are looking for a specific section of an act, you can also specify that that is the section that you're looking for by simply typing an S and then the number of the section that you are looking for. When looking for legislation, I would also recommend using the filter on the right-hand side to include that it is specifically the legislation that you are looking for. We can then search for this. Now, because I have specified that it's section 5 specifically that I am after, that particular section has now become available at the top of the screen for me. If I was not too sure which section I was looking for, or I wanted to scroll through the entire act, you will always be provided with the entire table of contents for the whole act. And just to show you what that will look like, I'm going to click into it. Once the table of contents is selected, you will then have two options where you can search for specific terms, specific areas within that particular act, or you will be provided with the entire act in which you can look through all of the different sections and which each of the different sections will discuss. Depending on an act, there may well be more than one part, in which case all you would need to do is use the arrows to extend up the part, and then you'll be able to see the different sections that sit within each. Heading back onto our specific section here, just before we go in and have a look at this particular section, I did just want to highlight for you some of the additional filter options that you can use when searching for legislation. Over on the left-hand side, we of course have already specified that it was legislation that we were looking for. This now enables us to choose additional filters, including whether we want the act, whether it's a statutory instrument. You may even want to filter to EU or retained EU using those same filters. If we continue to scroll, we'll also have the option to use a timeline where you can pop on some time frames to find certain legislation. You can filter by practice areas and specific topics within a practice area. And you can also choose specific sources, for example, whether it's the UK Parliament Act, UK Parliament statutory instruments, etc. As well as all of these filters, we do also have the search within results box on the left-hand side, where, for example, if you were searching for the Criminal Justice Act, but maybe you weren't too sure which section covered murder or manslaughter, let's say, you could use the search within results box there to pop in those additional terms to be able to find specifically where that kind of topic or area is discussed. So let's now go into a specific section of some legislation of an Act of Parliament so that we can see what those features are within the actual document. So there are 3 or 4 main features when it comes to using legislation on Lexis Plus. One of which is over on the left-hand side, which is the colour coding that will let you know whether the section that you are looking at is in force, partly in force, or no longer in force. And those work a little bit like traffic lights. So you've got green for in force, orange for partly in force, and red for no longer in force. What we also have is when you are searching for an act, you may not realize that you have searched for an older version or an original version, which is actually what I just did. I searched for the 2003 Act. Now, for this specific section, section 5, the current version is actually 2005. And by default, it will automatically provide you with the current version. Now you will be able to tell because where we have the versions, it will say current. So you will know that it's on the current one and what that current one is, which happens to be 2005. If you expand this is a timeline. So you are able to go back to the original or any other versions that there have been if you want to see how they differ or what those original versions may have looked like. Now, if you're interested in understanding the different amendments that may have happened to a particular section of an act, particularly where there has been lots of different versions, like we have here, where we search for 2003, but the actual current version is 2005, you might be wanting to understand why we have these new versions and what's changed between those. And to do that, you just have to use the Show Changes toggle over on the right-hand side, which if you switch on, is going to highlight for you what those differences are, what those amendments are, whether maybe something's been added in, maybe something's been taken out. You can read all of this. All you need to do is click onto the arrows on the right and it will let you know. For example, here we actually have subsection 3A that was actually repealed by the Drugs Act in 2005. So this is a way for you to be able to see what's happened, what's been added, what's been taken out, and that's been done by. And you can, of course, switch that off if you would prefer to. Now, we also do have a comparison mode, which is our compare versions button, which if selected will enable you to see what is different between different versions of a section or of an act. You can change the version, so you can pop on which one you'd like to compare. So we may want to compare maybe the current 2005 with the original 2003. You then get a side-by-side view where you can really easily see what is different. What was the original wording? What is it now? What's been added in? What's been taken out? And you can see here that this was what the original subsection 3A said, but it has now been taken away. So this is a really nice way of being able to see what is different between versions and particularly what that original wording was. You can close that compare mode to come back to the typical view that we saw a moment ago. If you do scroll to the bottom of the legislation, you will find some additional information under notes, including commencements, appointments, and also some amendments in there. We do provide you with the table of contents on the left-hand side. So that is the same table of contents that we looked at a moment ago, where you would maybe want to look through the whole act. This is also on the actual page. So if you did want to continue scrolling through an act, you always have the option to do that. Now, we also do have our information tab available over on the right-hand side, which is where you'll be able to find some supporting materials included related and suggested documents, for example, case law that's specific to this particular section here, maybe some guidance, some books and journals. But we also have our Holsbury's annotations. Now, the Holsbury's annotations come directly from the Holsbury's Laws of England text, which is a specific book that will cover all of the laws of England and the commentary that goes alongside that. It's essentially how those laws actually apply in practice. Now, every legislation that you look at on Lexis Plus will also have the Holsbury's annotations, where you'll be able to see what the Holsbury's text has mentioned or has said about specific sections. So that is also an option if you do want to use that and read those. Now, just coming back onto our homepage one more time by using the Lexis logo on the left. I did also just want to point out that when you are looking for legislation where you maybe don't know what the act is or you don't know the section, You can run keyword topic searches to be able to find the legislation. All you need to do is type in the topic area that you may be looking for. So maybe we're wanting to understand what legislation covers pocket knife or pocket knives. Once again, we can use our legislation filter here to know that we specifically are looking for the legislation that covers this area. And it is then going to bring back for us those key acts or statutory instruments that actually talk about pocket knife and will cover that particular topic area for us. Of course, we are able to use those filters that we spoke about a moment ago. Maybe you knew a particular time, but you couldn't remember the name of the act. Maybe you just knew it was from a certain year, in which case you could put that in. And so on. So if you know the name of the act, if you know the section, you can type that in and you can be specific. If not, you can run topic searches or you can use that table of contents to navigate through that entire act. And that brings our video to a close on how to find and use the legislation on Lexis Plus.